In a seismic shift for the film industry, Warner Media says its studio will make its 2021 movies available on streaming at the same time they are released in theaters. Typically, studios must adhere to a 90-day waiting period before putting new films up for video on demand or streaming services. However, Warner Brothers will simultaneously release 17 of its new films on the studio's $15 a month streaming service, HBO Max. The move is a major threat to the movie theater industry, which has struggled during the pandemic. For more, I'm joined by Sharon Waxman in Los Angeles. She's the editor-in-chief, founder, and CEO of The Wrap. Hi, Sharon. Welcome. Great to see you. So why is Warner Media making this move, and what do they believe it signals about the future of the movie business during the pandemic?
It is, as you described, it's kind of a bombshell that has been thrown into the movie industry ecosystem as a whole. And what it really says is that the movie-going theatrical experience has now been downgraded in terms of its priorities for Warner Media as a company. It's a big bet. It's a risky bet, because in doing that, Warner Media is giving up a lot of revenue or potential revenue. So it's been a really disorienting year for the studios. And as you say, it's been an absolutely brutal year for the exhibition industry. The question is, once you do this for a year or for a major studio, can you really go back to the old system? What will theaters be able to do? AMC, which is the country's largest theater chain, has already come out and said they're freaking out essentially about it, as you may expect. But what it says is that the CEO of Warner Media, Jason Kilar, who came in this year, is determined to make the future of Warner digital as opposed to theatrical, and he's kind of throwing down the gauntlet to the big streamers now, Netflix and now Disney Plus, and saying, we're going to play.
So how does that change the revenue model, number one? And number two, does it seem that other big, movie-making outfits, whether they are not, maybe not even necessarily big from any size, are they going to follow suit, do you think?
Those are all really good questions. So I would say right now we have a lot more questions than answers about what this means. There's no doubt that it's seismic, and it has a lot of ripple effects and implications for the different pieces of the industry, for other studios, for theatrical companies, for exhibition companies as a whole, for producers, for talent. For me, it raises the question, like, what does that mean for the future of a blockbuster movie? A blockbuster movie is generally a movie that has to cost a certain amount of money, has to cost a certain amount of money to market. You got to be able to make that model work to pay the talent, those huge back-end deals. By the way, if it's streaming, there's no more back-end deals. And that you have to hit, I don't know, $1 billion would be kind of what you want to hit for a global hit, the Fast and Furious franchise, a Marvel movie, a DC Comics blockbuster movie, right? That whole model, the whole movie industry has been built around that model for the last 20 years. To me, that whole thing has come into question. So to your question about whether other studios will follow suit, it's a great question. There is another major studio, Universal, that has already struck an agreement with two of the biggest theater chains in the country around tightening the amount of time between the release in theaters and then streaming down to 17 days. That used to be 90 days. And the theaters hung on to that for as long as they possibly could, even as they saw Netflix coming and Disney Plus coming, and it was really inevitable that was just going to collapse at a certain point. But this year was the year COVID just was the blow that took down this whole rickety wall, if you like. So Universal, I spoke to them yesterday. They're sticking with their window for the moment. Remains to be seen what other studios are going to do.
Well, is part of the pressure the fact that a lot of these studios just have all of these movies in the pipeline that they kept expecting to release as soon as things got better, and things are not getting better, they're just getting worse. So they have this pressure building. That might change, though, once the vaccine comes out and we don't have to deal with the coronavirus on the same level. That pressure might not be there anymore to release these films, correct?
I think all of that is true, but I don't really think that's what's going on here. I think what's going on here is that Jason Kilar and Warner Media has made a very specific and bold strategic move to bet on digital, which is to say HBO Max, versus its studio theatrical business. I think that is what's going on here. And that is a paradigm shift for what was the traditional. It is,
because who stands... I don't understand the ins and outs of Hollywood economics the way you do, but it seems to me that when a movie is released out into the world in the past, a lot of people stand to make a lot of money from it in perpetuity, right? I mean, like you get residuals, the director, the actors, everybody, every time it's sent to a new country, there's more money that comes in. So once you're making this deal with a streaming service, does it work the same way, or are you basically handing all rights over to the streaming service?
That's a really great question. It's chaos right now in terms of all of that stuff and all of those deals that get made. Just imagine if you've made a certain deal, you have a movie in the pipeline, your Warner Brothers is coming out next year. You had all of these contracts in place and the CEO just decided, boom, that's now going to streaming. All of those things need to be renegotiated because the idea of a back-end deal, like Tom Cruise would make so much money on the Mission Impossible movies because he would take a piece of the profit and put that, take the risk with the studio instead of getting that huge check up front. None of that stuff holds true for streaming. Netflix has really changed the model. It's gone into massive volume of production, but much smaller fees and limited fees. So that's why when I referred to the ecosystem being changed, that's exactly what I mean, that everything that touches that production, it's not just the producer, the studio, and the theater who are impacted. It's really the whole, that whole economic universe. So I think, as I said, there really are a lot more questions than answers. But I think essentially, for years, the studios were reluctant to give up this huge amount of revenue that they were getting from theaters. And theaters, of course, were pushing hard to keep that experience. And many of us out there in the world love the experience of going to movies and experiencing the drama, emotion, horror, humor, whatever, in a big dark room with a lot of other people. Since that's not possible in COVID, it's kind of forced the issue.
Yeah, it seems to me until all these details can be teased out and until all the various unions and different theatrical concerns can get their hands in there and figure out how to get a piece of this new model, it seems like in the short term, it's only going to enrich a few people at the top and leave out the whole rest of the ecosystem of the movie-making machine.
Yes, that's true. But I think that on behalf of moviegoers, you could argue this is great for moviegoers. You guys, everybody gets to choose what movie they want to see, how they want to, either in the theater or over their streaming platform, when they want to, in the comfort of their home, etc. And it really does put HBO Max in serious competition with Netflix, because if you've got these huge movies going up there for $15 a month, as you're pointing out, for Netflix, that makes it a really compelling bargain for the entertainment consumer.
Absolutely. Well, Sharon Waxman, thank you so much. I'm sorry the producers are yelling at me because I've gone over. It was so fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much.